Okay, sorry about that. We are back. Hello, sumo fans. The stream was listed as unlisted, so I didn't think anybody would be able to see it. So anyway, in the battle to basically kick everybody out who doesn't belong in the title race, certain people have emerged and certain people are done. So, in Kiribayama versus Hoshoryu, now this is a very tense rivalry. These guys are some good old-fashioned rivals. Came in at the same time. I think they were in the same one of the martial arts clubs. They were in the same club together. They're both trying to make an Ozeki run. They both have Kiribayama has Kakuryu as a coach. Hoshoryu has Asanoyama as an uncle. And really, when I picked Hoshoryu, it's like he tricked me again. He is very, very aggressive. He stands out, but he seems to crack under pressure when it really, really matters. And unfortunately for him, he has been eliminated from this title race, and Kiribayama is now potentially the winner of this tournament. We will have to see. I mean, Daieisho is almost veteran status at this point, and certainly veteran status in comparison to Kiribayama. But he has won a title. He was looking really good winning the Fuji TV tournament. So I still think Daieisho has a really good shot at this, but I think Kiribayama's making his case that he might make his move now. And if he wins this tournament, then he's definitely on his way to Ozeki. Then we had the Wakatakage versus Midorifuji match. And I knew that Wakatakage was going to win. He's in a desperate spot to keep a Sekiwaki position. He doesn't want to snowball any further down. He's really had a hard time just ever since he won the title. He hasn't been the guy that everybody was hyping up, and that's got to be killing him with Kiribayama and Hoshoryu. You know, they're fighting, they're rising to the top, and Waka's just slipping away. And poor Midorifuji, that was a hard loss for him. He tried right at the edge to do his Katatsukaashi. He couldn't pull it off. Wakatakage was just too strong. This is definitely an area where, you know, you had two small men going at it, so Wakatakage could counter all of the speed that Midorifuji has, and he's a little bit stronger. So now we are at a tie here where Daieisho and Midorifuji are both 10-2. And we have Kiribayama, Wakamotoharu, and Kotonowaka all at 9-3. So this race is completely up in the air. Anybody could take it at this point. Speaking of which, Wakamotoharu defeats Endo. And Daieisho defeats Hokutofuji. That was bound to happen. And Kotonowaka defeats Meisei. So at this point, I don't know, even Wakamotoharu has an opportunity to come out of nowhere. I think it's very, very possible. And Kotonowaka, we've been predicting for a long time that he was going to make his move. I don't necessarily think it's this tournament, but literally anything could happen here, including Midorifuji could pull it off, but I'm not expecting it. So definitely today, one of the matches of the day, Koto Shoho versus Ura. This is a final match conversation. So Ura is just getting thrown all around the ring, but he does not give up. He never, ever gives up. And Koto Shoho, who's had a very rough tournament, whom I picked to win it all, it's completely doing the opposite of that, just pulls off the most beautiful throw I've ever seen. But I got thinking about it. Part of why that throw looked so awesome was because Ura tucked his head pretty good and did a nice perfect roll. And it got me thinking about training in terms of, they're doing the pushing and they're pushing until they're exhausted. And then at the very end, they get tapped on the back and then they do those rolls. And I can see why they practice this roll. Because as I'm watching Shoho do this desperate throw on Ura at the end, where he has barely any energy left, if Ura doesn't tuck his head, he's paralyzed or worse. So you kind of have to have that as second nature to tuck your head, because Shoho, obviously he's doing everything he can to really throw him over, but Ura's got to do his part too, or that's a major, major injury. So it just made me think, wow, I can see the purpose of this training now. And I would also say another thing that's going on in this tournament is the veterans are looking like veterans, which is really unfortunate. It almost seems like we might be headed for a mass exodus here. We have Takerufuji falling apart. He's still in it. He hasn't gotten his Makikoshi yet, but he's falling apart. Nishikigi's starting to look like his age. Sadano Umi's starting to look like his age. We're getting to a point where, and Tamawashi, me and John were making all these jokes about Tamawashi could take an injury and still win the title, and he suddenly looks like the oldest man in sumo in this tournament. He has the spark, he never gives up, but he looks a lot slower, and he's getting overpowered. Haven't seen that in a long time. So that's been a little nerve-wracking. And we have a couple of people here. Hello, Quackadoo, not Kakuryu. And hello, Daniel. Yeah, Shoho has shown glimpses of good sumo. I'm glad to see it pay off. Today was definitely a good day for him. It's got to be bugging him that all these other guys are showing their stuff now that Takekeisho's out and Terunofuji's not there. And this is the time for the young guys to prove themselves, and Shoho, who looked so great in the last tournament, isn't even in the conversation right now. Which, speaking of which, is Shoho in the same stable as Kotonowaka? Are these brother Kotos, like stablemate brothers? Let me know if you guys know. So we're also dealing with a lot of injuries, it seems. I think when this tournament is over, we're going to hear about, like, this guy needs a surgery, this guy's taking a tournament off, this guy, won't be back or won't train at all until the last minute. Takayasu looks hurt. Hokuseiho definitely looks hurt. I don't know what's going on with Ruden. He's going back to his old ways. He was rising, and now it's falling apart for him. And I have down here, well, I want to talk about the best matches of the day, which I started off talking about. But before that, I want to just discuss something that I won't go too into. But that Abi, he's killing me with those hankas. He's killing me. It's like, it's definitely a sign for him that things are not going so well. You could talk about, Hoshoryu pulling it off as a strategy, and he's really good at it. But when Abi does it, it's a sign of weakness. And it just doesn't look good, and I'm really bummed that Abi is falling back into his old ways and not looking so good this tournament. Quackadoo appropriately says that Kakuryu is number one. He must be proud. I am sure Kakuryu is jumping for joy right now, particularly because, Hakuho's name was all over the place with his new prospects, with Ochi, with Hokuseiho. But yet it is Kakuryu's protege right now who is probably going to be the most talked about. If he wins the tournament, then we're really going to get some hype. But right now, I think people have their eye on him. I don't think anybody thinks that Daieisho or Midorifuji are just going to win out. Now that everything's so close, like, it's going to be a free-for-all on the last day, probably. And Kakuryu confirms that Koto-Shoho and Kotonowaka are in the same stable. And Daniel says, yes, the only Koto that isn't part of Sadonokake is Kotoku-zan because he is Kotoku, not Koto. Oh, that's very interesting. That's one of those language situations that if you don't know how to read in the kanji, then you wouldn't realize that it's Kotoku and not Koto. Yeah, so what do you guys think was the match of the day? I have Koto-Shoho versus Ura, and I have Wakatakage versus Midorifuji. And then I wouldn't necessarily say this was the match of the day, but this was sort of one of the moves of the day. The amazing awareness at the edge by Wakamotoharu. I mean, Endo went for broke there, and he wanted to knock him out, and I don't know how Wakamotoharu stayed inside, but that was a very, very impressive move. So it gives me a lot of hope. We haven't been looking at Wakamotoharu that much. Maybe some people have, but everybody's been talking about Wakatakage forever. And Wakamotoharu is just doing his thing, being stable, doing his elder brother thing. And out of nowhere, he's the one in conversation. I keep thinking he might be the guy to go on the next Ozeki run. How amazing would it be if he wins this tournament? Hello, Mitch. Hello, Stargazer. Glad that you're here. Somebody's got to tell me in the comments section what was the match of the day for them. Because I'm really, really curious. Or was it, I got Koto-Shoho and Ura. I got, what's my other one here? Wakatakage, Midorifuji, and then I have Hoshoryu and Kiribayama. Daniel says, I think Hoshoryu versus Kiribayama was the bout of the day. But also, Waka and Midori is also a contender. But, well, it's funny because both of those matches, I mean, I really do wish Wakatakage was in this as well, because then we've been talking about the three guys. Wakatakage, Hoshoryu, and Kiribayama. And now we've got Hoshoryu and Kiribayama coming up and Waka falling. And this seems to be the way it works. Like, we can't have all three guys at the same time. Everybody takes their turn. And right now, Wakatakage is in the slump. And Wakamotoharu is starting to jump in there, which is interesting. So who are you picking to win this all? Who do you think is... Oh, yes, that's on my list. We're going to talk about that, Kakuryu. Maybe we'll talk about that now. Probably the surprising match of the day, and you might even call it the match of the day, is Asanoyama versus Oho. And we did a lot of talking about Asanoyama in last night's live stream. And lo and behold, he has a match that shows exactly what we were talking about. He has all the tools he needs physically, and he's a very skilled fighter. But sometimes things go wrong. And I'm not sure if Oho just beat Asanoyama, if you could give just 90% of it to Oho and 10% to Asanoyama, or with all the hype for Asanoyama, do you say he can't lose that match no matter what? I'm so torn. On one hand, Oho was supposed to be the next great fighter who's not living up to his potential. And so did he just have an amazing day because he was facing an opponent that he was really excited about? Or did Asanoyama just have a complete collapse today? And as I was thinking about this, I started to get really deep in my head about what the future for Asanoyama looks like. Because the way it's been with him in the past is a loss like that. Because it also, it puts Ichinojo in the lead. Everyone was talking last night about how they're more interested in the Juryo matchup than, or the Juryo title than the Makuuchi title. So now Ichinojo's the sole leader. And I don't think Asanoyama expected this. So if he comes back the rest of the week and just wins every match and, maybe even doesn't get the title, but he wins every match, no harm, no foul. But if he starts to lose now, who does he got left to fight? I'm pretty sure he already fought Ichinojo early on in the tournament. Everyone else is a Juryo guy. So he shouldn't lose another match. But it also goes to show what we were talking about also, that even though Oho's at the bottom and Asanoyama's at the top, there's this huge difference between being Juryo and being in Makuuchi. There's like this wall. And even Kin Bozan was talking about it in his interview. And I've always heard this over and over and over again. That no matter what, the intensity, maybe it's even the crowd, the loudness, the energy in the room, there's just something different. And just seeing Asanoyama lose to Oho like that just tells you I don't think he's going to come in and dominate. But then again, there's a lot of veterans that are at the bottom that he could probably beat. Daniel is surmising that Oho was on a roll going to that fight. It says he is 5-3 after his own 4 starts, so he was on a roll. This is something else we do know about Oho, is that his biggest problem is he takes forever to warm up. He has terrible first weeks, and then all of a sudden he starts to come alive a little bit, and then by the time he gets everything going, the tournament's over. So, he is a slow starter, and Asanoyama did face him right at the end of the tournament when he's, doing his best. So you've got to give at least some to Oho, but I don't know. We have to see how Asanoyama does tomorrow. And then really we have to see, he just needs to come back into the upper division. Yes, Oho is a young guy. Unfortunately, Asanoyama is no longer a young guy. Really, we won't know if this is a foreshadowing for Asanoyama until he comes back. But boy, Ichinojo, he's making a statement. How different would this tournament be right now if he hadn't gotten suspended? Would he raising the trophy? Of course, he probably would have injured Takekeisho, and although him being at the very bottom, well, he wouldn't have went to the bottom if he didn't get suspended. So, yeah, he probably would have hurt Takekeisho in, day 2 or day 3, and then, he would have had the momentum from that. So, let me just check something here. Tomorrow, they're trying to obviously thin the pool out some more in anticipation for the weekend. We have Wakatakage versus Kotonowaka. We have Hoshoryu versus Midorifuji, Endo versus Kiribayama, and Hokutofuji versus Wakamotoharu. I find these matches to be very, very interesting because Wakatakage just handed Midorifuji a crushing loss. He's still trying to climb above water and keep a Sekirake ranking. So he's going to go into this match with Kotonowaka very fired up because he's going to be feeling good about beating Midorifuji, and he's still hungry to prove that he can win, and he's got a chance to affect the outcome of the tournament by beating Kotonowaka. But I don't know. I know that Midorifuji's very nervous. And he's a small guy. Is Wakatakage going to be able to push Kotonowaka around like he did Midorifuji? I don't think so. But that doesn't mean Kotonowaka won't make a mistake. And then, getting back to the Ichinojo topic. I don't know. Ichinojo definitely is someone who benefits from rest. If he didn't have rest, would he be as good? And he's also facing much weaker competition. Yeah, that's true. Ichinojo has got persistent back issues, persistent, I'd say endurance issues, and maybe that's because of the back. So yeah, he got a rest, and he's just, who's in Juryo, really? Until Ochiai comes up, higher up, and Juryo's not full of a lot of talent right now. For the best match conversation, this is from Mitch. I have a hunch the best is yet to come. Kiribayama versus Daieisho. I'm really hoping they put that on day 15. Well, let's talk about the matches for tomorrow, and then we can surmise the likely possibilities of who's facing who and what situations. So tomorrow's Wakatakage versus Kotonowaka. That match is really up in the air for me. I think either man can take it. Hoshoryu versus Midorifuji. Now, this is a very interesting match because Hoshoryu's just been knocked out. And he's, him, he's just so angry. He is so angry right now that he is going to put everything on Midorifuji. And Midorifuji, he's still tied for first place, so he's got some of the pressure off in a weird way, because now he's not the sole guy. So he could use Hoshoryu's anger and the fact that he's tied. He could use this in a positive way, and it actually could help him exercise the nerves, because Hoshoryu is going to give him everything. And then you can meet energy with energy. And then you have the fact that Midorifuji, he's not knocked out. He's still got like a couple of chances before he's not going to win. So this is another toss-up, because sometimes Hoshoryu gets too angry and blows it. So I think this is going to be an excellent match. I really hope that we see, these guys grappling and trying throws and hanging on the edge, back and forth. I love those kind of matches, and you get them from guys like these guys. And we have Endo versus Kiribayama. Endo just got knocked out today as well, and Kiribayama is in it. Endo could pull off a sneaky little, let me mess up your tournament win. He probably thought he was going to win today. And just, this is always the case with Endo. He's always so close to doing more. And then just loses out in the end, and you almost don't remember he was a part of the conversation. And then we have Hokutofuji versus Wakamotoharu. Hokutofuji's been having a decent tournament for him, but Wakamotoharu, unless he gets nervous or something, he should be able to defeat Hokutofuji. So in the scenario that Kotonowaka wins, Kotonowaka and Midorifuji and Kiribayama and Wakamotoharu, if they all win and keep everything exactly the same, then I didn't write down who Daieisho's facing tomorrow. Who is Daieisho? Oh, how did I screw that up? Did I write it down here somewhere? I don't know who Daieisho's facing tomorrow. But because none of these guys are facing each other, we still can go into the weekend where they all have to face each other. No matter what, we're going to get just day after day after day of matches of consequence. Unless, these guys have all got to win to stay in the conversation, but they have the opportunity to do that. So if we get a Kotonowaka, Midorifuji, Kiribayama, Wakamotoharu, and Daieisho, if they all win tomorrow, then we have Saturday and Sunday, everybody facing each other. So I want to read the chat a little bit here. Quack, no, it's only 31 wins over 3 Basho if he goes 12-3. I think Kakuryu, if he gets the Yusho, maybe. I think it's contingent on getting the Yusho. The problem is they don't like to promote Ozeki and Yokozuna unless you have faced Ozeki and Yokozuna. And this is going to be the problem for everybody. And eventually they're going to have to break that rule. But they might make Kiribayama wait simply to see if he can face Terunofuji or Takakeisho in the next tournament. Like, it would be hard to justify giving it to him with less than 33 wins without facing any Ozeki or Yokozuna. He would have to have been dominant, I think. But what it means is if he goes 12-3 and or wins a Yusho, he's definitely the very next tournament they're going to be talking about. If you do X in this tournament, you're Ozeki. Mitch says, I smell a Midorifuji Hanka, mostly because I want to see if a third attempt against Hoshoryu works or not. That's funny because if I was Midorifuji, I don't know. I don't know if he'd be scared off because Hoshoryu has been really owning people who try to hanka him. Or if Midorifuji's like, I got this. I can do it. What if we get a double hanka? What if Midorifuji and Hoshoryu just hanka each other and they just both jump to the side? That would be amazing. I would love to see that. Sometimes the hanka can be fun. Oh, yes. Daieisho faces Meisei tomorrow. I don't know how I didn't write that down. I've been given Meisei, all this credit for affecting outcomes. He hasn't done it yet this tournament, so he's got a chance tomorrow. But even if he does, with Daieisho tied for first, Daieisho has another shot. All these guys with 3 losses, they have to win or they're done. So, like today, there is a good chance of thinning out all the guys who are going to face each other. It's possible. But it's also because they didn't make anybody, face each other here. It's also possible that it's a free-for-all this weekend. Which, that would be very appropriate. Stormy Basho, nobody at the top, Asanoyama losing. It's exactly as promised. It's a total mess. It's a total mess. And unfortunately, we're not going to be able to talk about Takayasu going for a title. He's completely out of it. We've got just all kinds of mess at the bottom. And we don't really have anybody in Juryo that's really exciting besides Ochiai. And he's probably going to need 2 more tournaments before we may possibly see him in Makuuchi. So it's a little... I don't know. Are you guys enjoying this tournament? Or are you bummed out by this tournament? I'm going to have to see how it all ends before I can really give an assessment. Because when it started off with all this excitement and hype about Takakeisho going for a Yokozuna run, and it just got stamped out so quickly that for about 2 days, I wasn't into it. Because it takes a while especially now because we don't have a dominant guy, it takes a while for you to start to see like who's going to emerge, who's possibly going to be challenging for the Yusho, who's possibly going to be putting together a really good record and be the next Ozeki. It was just so deflating that you had this exciting thing to look forward to, and I was hoping to see Takakeisho right to the end. I had surmised a possible slow walk if Takakeisho wasn't able to do it, and we didn't even get an opportunity to see it. It was already over on day 1. In my mind, I already knew, just because Takakeisho losing like that. So you lose out on that. The fact that Terunofuji is sort of, we're just not going to know until he steps foot in the ring again. And now you have the free-for-all, and the free-for-all can be exciting. A lot of the guys we've been talking about all this time that we've really, really wanted to see emerge are starting to emerge. But can they keep doing it? Can somebody please be the man? I think we were totally spoiled with Hakuho. Daniel says, Kotonowaka when healthy looks good in Juryo. This battle show in terms of the top division is okay, depending on the outcome. I agree with you. I think, and I have concerns about Kotonowaka health-wise. And I think that's what my concerns are with sumo in general. We're losing a lot of really good guys to injury. And I having not watched before 2017, I don't know how common this was. Is the issue that there's just not a ton of people who backfill when there's injuries? So you're just losing people instead of like, okay, well, he wasn't good enough. Who's the next guy? Or are people getting more hurt than ever now? Because I've just seen way too many really good prospects get hurt right at the worst moment. Mitch says, it's been kind of a sad basho. Takakeisho Kyujo, Tochinoshin looking even more hurt, most likely losing Tokushoryu to Mokushita again, and the possible talk of retirement. Yes, I hate to say this, but this basho feels like there's a cloud over it. I don't know that I've felt this cloud ever. There's been plenty. I mean, I've been disappointed with Takakeisho before. You know, he's gone on a Yokozuna attempt multiple times. But something about this time felt really final. Like he's never going to have a shot again. Because it took him so long to win a title, to even put himself in this position. And now he's got to start all over again. Kadoban. So instead of like it's one thing to not get the Yokozuna thing. It's another thing to start off Kadoban. When we just lost Shodai, Mitakeyumi, Asanoyama. It's just like, can we get some good news? And then when Hokuseiho came in, I overhyped him. I really, really want to see him come in and dominate and everybody be like, whoa, this guy's amazing. He's going to be the next Yokozuna. And he's fighting average for a new guy. And perhaps that is exactly how I shouldn't raise the standard any higher than that. But yeah, I mean, I put Tochinoshin in this veterans looking like veterans. We're gonna lose him eventually, and he hurt his shoulder again, and he just like stepped right out of the match. The problem with Tochinoshin is he's been overcompensating for those knees for so long. Now his shoulders are deteriorating, and this is what happened to Ikioi. I don't know if any of you guys have been watching that long, but Ikioi would fight and fight and fight, and he would somehow keep himself in the bottom part of Makuuchi. Once he got down to Juryo, he just couldn't sustain it, and eventually, like, his taped up body just couldn't do sumo anymore, and he's been gone. And we're headed for that with Tochinoshin. We're headed for that with Takarafuji. We're headed for that with Terunofuji. And boy, I hope we're not headed for that with Takakeisho. I don't think so. But now he's got to recover from the meniscus tear, get 8 wins, and then start all over again. In every tournament, he's just a little bit older. And the wear and tear of being the top guy every single tournament is just, it's eating away at his years left. Like, we could see Takakeisho retire at 30. I could easily see that. Of course, Chris Sumo was like, do you see this guy fighting to 29? I'm like, come on, man. Like, give us a little bit more time. But Mitch says, gonna need Terunofuji to start stamping the evil spirits ASAP. Bring him back for, like, one day just to the dojo if the evil is out of the dojo. Yeah, seriously. Can we just have a Yokozuna ceremony, even if the Yokozuna isn't fighting? I mean, his knees are probably good enough to do the ceremony, right? And then Kakuryu says, I think people are getting more hurt for some reason. I do too. I don't have time. I don't have the time before 2017 to compare to. But I would say since even 2017, more and more and more injuries. If you think about Takakeisho, for instance, he's a young guy just getting hurt over and over and over again. Tomokaze, that guy didn't have a losing record. Like, he was the guy who was going to be the next guy. Then has a major, major injury and gets knocked all the way down. That's what happened to Terunofuji. You know, that Tochinoshin, he could have been a Yokozuna if he didn't have busted knees. And then you have Koto Shoho. An injury is what snapped him out of his, brilliant debut. Abi's obviously hurt. Hokuseiho just showed up and he's hurt already. My guess is this, and we'll never know. My guess is that the sumo pool is so thin that everybody's getting overworked. It's like being at your job. If you have 5 people doing a job that 15 people should do, those 5 people are going to burn out after a while. So I think it might not even be physically, but it could be mentally. The people are always in their ear saying, you gotta move, we need somebody. I mean, there's all this talk all the time. Who's going to be Ozeki? Who's going to be Yokozuna? And there aren't the guys who actually are capable of doing it. And then the guys who need more time, they get hurt or they fall apart mentally. So, I don't know. I'm really hoping that this trend reverses. And I'm really hoping that the May tournament, I'm feeling so much more hopeful. Because, yeah, this is a rough one. Anybody notice that, Sumo Primetime disappeared, too? When Takakeisho was in it was like, Sumo Primetime! And then all of a sudden, they haven't posted a video in 9 days. So I'm like, okay, well, I guess maybe even the Sumo Association's a little depressed. Because they really wanted somebody to hype. So it's going to really depend on how this Basho ends. If we have a couple of days of amazing matches with, if we have a couple of matches that are really amazing, a little bit of a story arc, a little bit of a comeback, if whoever wins the tournament cries like a baby and tells a great story, these are all things that might make us feel a lot better. Stargazer says, we were very spoiled during the Hakuho era. 3 Yokozuna, 4 Ozeki. If one was injured, then the others would carry the weight of the upper ranks. Yeah. That could very well be the reason that we are so much more hungry for something because of that era. In fact, there were 4 Yokozunas when I started watching. It was Hakuho, Kiribayama, Kiseno Sato, even though, yes, he was basically injured the whole time, but he existed, and Haramofuji. And then the train started as soon as I started watching sumo. I just start watching. It's Goeido versus Haramofuji for the title. Haramofuji wins. I'm so excited. It's my first tournament. Haramofuji's the Yokozuna. All the other guys were out. Every single other Yokozuna was hurt. So the trend had already started. And I'm like, I like this Haramofuji guy. He's cool. I'm going to root for him. And I'm all hyped and I'm watching, sumo coverage. And all of a sudden it's like, Haramofuji's retiring. I'm like, what? I just started to like the guy. Yeah, he hit somebody with a bottle or a remote control, a karaoke remote, and he's done. And I'm like, what? This happens? This kind of thing happens? And I feel like we just went through 3 years of this between all the guys who got banned for COVID violations. You had Abi and Asanoyama and Ryuden. We need a win, guys. We need a win. And sumo, although it's the most individual sport in some ways, is still a team effort. If you only have Terunofuji and Takakeisho carrying the weight up at the top and nobody else fighting those tough matches, nobody else being the final match of the day, those 2 are going to get injured. Those 2 are going to get burned out. We probably could have had Terunofuji a lot longer if, Takakeisho could have been Yokozuna. And then Daniel says, I think we're just in a weird time because we've been conditioned for 20 years of a top dog with the era of Asashoryu and Hakuho. Yeah. I mean, Hoshoryu was an amazing talent all of his own. Once again, scandal gets him kicked out. But Hakuho is one of the greatest athletes of all time and one of the greatest underdog stories just being this skinny little guy that they were like, you should be our hairdresser for the stable, to being like the greatest of all time and having the greatest sumo mind and being able to walk the line with the Sumo Association where he could do some of the things they didn't want without getting himself kicked out. You know, because boy, it's a brutal system. You make a mistake, you are done. Granted, I'm not saying that what Hatomafuji did was a good thing. I'm not saying anything. I'm not giving anybody a pass for their behaviors, but I'm just saying Hakuho knew how to dance on the line and still be the top guy. And when you're coming out of an era where you had one of the greatest of all time, everything's going to feel just not as good. You're waiting for the next Hakuho, and that could be 25 years, if ever. I do think there will be another Hakuho, but not anytime soon. Mitch says, I think Hokuseiho has more issue than being hurt. I feel he needs anything more at the Tachiai. Oh, I 100% agree with that. He's very lackluster at the Tachiai. I think he's not sure how to engage because of how tall he is. I don't think he's figured out his sumo body yet. Because for him, he can't crash head on head with anybody. They're crashing into his chest. And, you know, so if you look at Ichinojo just lets people destroy their heads on his chest. It's almost like Hokuseiho lets people come to him and he tries to grab them, but then he has no force at the Tachiai, and it's just awkward. So he needs, and there's a lot of short guys now. You got Midorifuji, Hoshoryu, you got all the tiny sumo. You know, maybe that's all it is. Hakuho did say that Hokuseiho struggles with the short, tiny guys. Kakuryu says, what about Takanohana and Chiyonofuji before them? They were top dogs for a while. So that's interesting too. And there was also the Hawaiian sumo guys. They were top dogs. There was a couple of them, you know, at a time. There were multiple times in sumo where we had more than one Yokozuna. And they were both very, very, like, amazing. But interestingly enough, Takanohana, big scandal, blows up same scandal as the Hatomafuji situation, but there was also more going on. But Takanohana just blows up sumo and then disappears. And then he's just gone. And here's, like, somebody who was a well-respected Yokozuna, and he's just away from sumo forever, never to be spoke of again. And unfortunately, Chiyonofuji died. It might have been a very different situation if he was still around. But yeah, I mean, there were eras of sumo that were probably just, I mean, Chiyonofuji was amazing. He was amazing Yokozuna. All muscle, speed, just a very different type, especially compared to the Hawaiian guys. Like, they were huge. They were big guys that you had to move. And here's Chiyonofuji, this, like, agile, you know, little power man. So, did you touch on Daiki Nakamura joining Nishonoseki? No, I did not. You might have to give me a little bit more information on it because I heard about it, but I did not really go into it deeply. I heard some rumblings that people were, I don't know if this was him or not, that people were getting mad that Hakuho was going to, like, suck up all the talent and then there was going to be no competition because they'd all be in the same stable. That wasn't him, was it? Because I don't know if, I don't think Nishonoseki is part of Hakuho's stable group. You might have to give me some more information on that, Daniel. I've only heard brief rumblings. And then, yes, Quackadoo, we had Kisano Sato. Kisano Sato set the standard, perhaps, for what we are facing now, where you have this super talented guy. I mean, he ended Hakuho's win streak. He was beating the best of the best. Kotonowaka reminds me of him. Kisano Sato could have been, like, he would still be fighting now. It's like such a shame that he got injured. Oh, okay. Nisho no Seki is Kisano Sato. Okay. That is very interesting. I love this concept that Kisano Sato, Kakuryu, even though Kakuryu isn't retired yet and doesn't have a stable yet, Kisano Sato, Hakuho, and Kakuryu all fighting with prospects now instead of fighting each other in the ring. That's pretty cool. I did not know Kisano Sato snatched him up. I did hear that Daiki Nakamura is like the next great hope. And we'll see how that all turns out, because training, it's like I said last night, I'm starting to think there's something to this training thing, because we had all these really, really strong guys for a long time, and we would just get people that would go up and down to Ozeki and Yokozuna. Now we're not having that, and I wonder if it's the messed up training for the last 3 years. And maybe these new guys that come up that don't have the disruption are going to carry on the old mantle. Mitch says, I heard the same thing about Hakuho Miyagino taking up most of the new quality recruits. They're probably not wrong either. He's had 2 Makushita Tsukidashi wrestlers since he's taken the stable over. Well, first of all, Hakuho already has like the Hakuho Cup, which he's had forever. So he gets a good look at all the best talent. Now, of course, everybody's there. But Hakuho's got the name. Hakuho's the face. He's the one who can convince these young guys to go to him. I'm sure his pitch is amazing. Could you imagine you want to be in sumo and then Hakuho comes up to you and says, join my stable? So that's going to be a problem for people. I mean, you can't stop the guys from being attracted to Hakuho. And Kakuryu asks, does Kisano Sato have a Sekitori? And Mitch says he has Tomokaze. Well, I mean, I don't know what kind of shape Tomokaze's in, because that injury, and he's been away for years now. But he's an amazing wrestler if he's recovered. If he's fully recovered, and I don't know if he is, Tomokaze could do something for Kisano Sato. But he got injured prior to Kisano Sato retiring, I think. Or at least prior to him becoming the stable master. So he's one of the guys he inherited, I believe. I don't know. What do you guys think about these future prospects? Do you think they're going to rise up and solve the problem that we're having right now? Or do you think we're just going to continue on this way? I have no reference to this tumultuous time to say, oh yeah, back in 1985, this happened, and it all turned itself around. Daniel says, Hakuho is definitely sucking up all the Jokoku high recruits. Hokuseiho, Ochiai, Mukai Nakano, since Ishira's dad is the guy running that sumo program. I forgot about that. Yeah, Hakuho's got the hookup. He's got Ishira's dad, and I get the feeling that Ishira's dad is living quite vicariously through this. Like, he gets to feed Hakuho, the great Hakuho, with these recruits. What a combination that is right there. Speaking of which, Ishira has still not retired, but it seems like his injury is one that he can't overcome. So I wonder if there's a reason why he hasn't retired yet. If there's some, like, sumo reason. Which stinks, because Ishira was my first favorite wrestler. I liked the fact that he kept his given name and wrestled under that name, and I liked that he was small guy sumo before there were all these small guys. Before Enho, before, Midorifuji, all these guys. The only small man was Ishira, and he did his thing. He did his thing. All right, before I go, I'm just going to make some more predictions, what I think is going to happen, and then I'll be back tomorrow night. Tomorrow night will be the last live stream that I'll do, because I won't do one Saturday night. And Sunday, we'll all know the results in the morning, basically. But, so for tomorrow, I'm going to say that Kotonowaka wins. I'm going to say Midorifuji wins. Kiribayama wins. And Wakamotoharu wins. I would better write this all down. And then Daieisho wins. I'm predicting that all the guys that need to win to stay in the fight are going to win. And we're going to, if you guys show up tomorrow, we're going to talk about the results of that. And then we can all do our predictions as to who's going to win this whole thing at the end. Because tomorrow we'll have a much better idea of who's actually going to win. And then on Sunday, John and I will record a recap show, and then I will put it out probably Monday. And we'll do that premiere thing where it's pre-recorded, but if you do a premiere, then a live chat will pop up, and I will listen to the show, and I will type responses to you guys. So you'll still get the chat, but just you won't get called out live. So thank you all for coming to the live stream tonight. It's going to be a wild ending. Even in Juryo, it'd be interesting to see if Ichinojo is the eventual winner. And I will see you, hopefully all of you, tomorrow night at 9:15.